संस्कृतवाङ्मये उक्तमस्ति ते जीवन आदर्शाः अस्माभिः पुनः व्यवहारे आनेतव्याः। तादृशं प्राचीन भारतं पुनः आधुनिक भारतं पुनः करणीयं। भारते पुनः सर्वविध भेद भावनानां निवारणं करणीयं। राष्ट्रीय भावैक्य निर्माणं करणीयं। ज्ञान क्षेत्रे, विज्ञान क्षेत्रे, तकनीकी क्षेत्रे, राष्ट्र जीवनस्य सर्व क्षेत्रेषु संस्कृतं पुनः अग्रे आनेतव्यं। यथा आर्थिक क्षेत्रम् इति अद्य अर्थस्य महत्त्वमस्ति। भारतम् आर्थिक क्षेत्रे अपि अग्रे आनेतव्यं। तत्र भारतीय चिन्तनम् अपि प्रदानं कर्तुं शक्नोति। प्राचीन भारतीय अर्थशास्त्रस्य उल्लेखं करोति चेत् तक्षणम् अस्माकं पुरतः एकमेव नाम आगच्छति, चाणक्य। चाणक्य इस् द 21st economist. ततः पूर्वं 20 economists अभवन्। चाणक्यस्यापि पूर्ण अध्ययनम् अद्य अस्माभिः न कृतम्। अर्थशास्त्रस्य बहवः ग्रन्थाः सन्ति, तेषाम् उपयोगः अद्य पर्यन्तं न कृतः। ततः अपि वयं लाभान् स्वीकर्तुं शक्नुमः। एवम् एतादृशम् अद्य अर्थप्रधान समाजे एवं तत्त्वप्रधान समाजः करणीयः। व्यक्तिप्रधान समाजतः पुनः समष्टिप्रधान समाज रचना करणीया अस्माभिः। एतादृशं भारतं समृद्ध भारतं, सामरस्ययुक्त भारतं, शान्तिपूर्ण भारतं, एतादृशं नवभारतम् अस्माभिः निर्मातव्यं। तदर्थं वदतु संस्कृतं, जयतु भारतम्।
अत्र अन्य एक ज्येष्ठः उपस्थितः अस्ति, तस्य परिचयं कारयितुम् इच्छामि। सच्चिदानन्द कुडुम्ब महोदयः सद्यः दिनद्वयात् पूर्वमेव तस्य राष्ट्रीय संस्कृत संस्थानस्य कुलपतिः इति घोषितः अस्ति। सः राष्ट्रीय संस्कृत संस्थान महान् संस्कृत विश्वविद्यालयः, एतस्य शाखायाः 18 सन्ति। महान् महोदयः इदानीम् अस्ति। मोहनदास महोदयं अहं प्रार्थयामि, पायन दत्वा गौरवं करोति।
अतीव स्फूर्तिदायकं भाषणं कृतवते श्रीमान् कृष्णशास्त्री महोदयाय धन्यवादः। वयं सर्वे संस्कृतभाषायाः वर्धनार्थम् अवश्यं कार्यं कुर्मः एव इति अस्मिन्नेव क्षणे प्रतिज्ञां कुर्मः। इदानीं केचन ग्रन्थाः लोकाय समर्प्यन्ते। तेषां ग्रन्थानां परिचयं कारयिष्यति श्री कुमार महोदयः। श्री कुमार महोदयः नारायण टेक्नो महाविद्यालये संस्कृत उपन्यासकः।
नमस्सभाये सभापतिभ्यश्च। शारदा शारदां भोजवदना वदनाम्भुजे सर्वदा सर्वदास्माकं सन्निधिं सन्निधिं क्रियाम्। एषोऽयं प्रमोदस्य विषयः यद् संस्कृतक्षेत्रं प्रत्यहम् अभिवर्धमानं दरीदृश्यते। आबालवृद्धाः संस्कृतं विपठिषन्ति। तेषां विपठिषा वर्धनाय विविधाः ग्रन्थाः नूनम् अपेक्षन्ते एव। तदर्थं यतमानाः संस्कृतभारतीजनाः नैके मनीषिणः विभिन्नस्तरीयपुस्तकानि रचयन्तः क्षेत्रमिदम् अभिवर्धयन्ति। तादृश अभिवर्धने तादृश अभिवर्धमाने संस्कृतक्षेत्रे अस्मिन् शुभसन्दर्भे चतुर्णां पुस्तकानां लोकार्पणं भविष्यति। तेषां पुस्तकानां परिचयं यथामति कर्तुं प्रयते अहम्। तत्र आदौ श्रीमता डॉक्टर चंद्रशेखर भट्टवर्येण तथैव कृष्णानंद पद्मनाभन महोदयेन च विरचितः ग्रन्थः वर्तते शब्दान् जानीमहे इति। या च परीक्षा अत्यन्तं क्लिष्टा वरिवर्ति तादृशीं तेनाली परीक्षां समुत्तीर्णौ वर्तेते इमौ महोदयौ तथैव मम अध्यापकौ अपि वर्तेते। शब्दान् जानीमहे इति पुस्तके 7 अध्यायाः वरिवर्तन्ते। अयं च ग्रन्थः व्याकरणग्रन्थः वर्तते। तत्र 75-चतुश्शतं शब्दाः तथैव वाक्यानि च वर्तन्ते। एतेषां व्याख्यानम् अत्र वर्तते। व्यवहारकाले बहवो हि क्लेशाः दोषाश्च जायन्त एव अस्माकं तेषां दोषाणां निवारणार्थं तथैव शुद्धाशुद्ध विचारम् अत्र कृतमस्ति। कथं दोषाणां निवारणं करणीयं, शुद्धं किम् अशुद्धं किम् इति ज्ञानाय अयं ग्रन्थः साहाय्यम् आचरति। तथैव एवमेव श्रीमता जनार्दन हेगडे महोदयेन 3 ग्रन्थाः विरचिषत। तेषु रूपशुद्धिः इति व्याकरणग्रन्थः वर्तते। यथा अस्माभिः पूर्वमेव दृष्टः ग्रन्थः वर्तते एकः शुद्धिकौमुदी इति, तथैव तस्य अपरं तादृश एव ग्रन्थः वर्तते रूपशुद्धिः इति ग्रन्थः। तत्र च सुबन्त तिङन्त अनुस्वार लेबन्त विभक्ति प्रकीर्णादयः विषयाः समुपलभ्यन्ते। एतेषु विषयेषु अस्माभिः बहवः दोषाः क्रियन्ते। तत्र दोषाणां परिमार्जनं कथं, के दोषाः, तेषां परिमार्जनं कथं, दोषनिवारणं कथम् इत्यादि विचाराः अत्र ग्रन्थे वरिवर्तन्ते। उदाहरणार्थं ऋतुः समाप्ता इति वक्तव्यं वा ऋतुः समाप्तः इति वक्तव्यं वा, लिङ्गदोषः, लिङ्ग पुल्लिङ्गः वा स्त्रीलिङ्गः वा नपुंसकलिङ्गः वा इति अस्माकं क्वचित् क्लेशः वर्तते। तादृशानां विषयेषु अत्र विचारः कृतः वर्तते। तथैव महोदयः कथापुस्तकानि अपि रचितवान्। तत्र बालकथा सप्ततिः इति एकः कथापुस्तकः वर्तते। नाम्नैव ज्ञायते कथापुस्तकमिति। तत्र बालानां कृते अत्युत्तमाः कथाः अत्र वरिवर्तन्ते। जनाः सर्वे पृच्छन्ति केवलं बालानां कृते एव कथाः वा, अस्माकं कृते कथाः न सन्ति वा इति पृष्टे सति तेषां कृतेपि कथानां पुस्तकं वर्तते उत्पुल्लम् अन्तरङ्गम् इति। अस्मिन् ग्रन्थेपि महोदयः 15 कथान् संगृह्य लिखितवान् वर्तते। एताः सर्वाः अपि कथाः अस्माभिः सर्वैः अपि पठनीयाः एव इत्युक्त्वा मत्कर्मणः विरमामि। धन्यवादः।
धन्यवादः कुमार महोदय। श्रीमन्तं मोहनदास पै महोदयं निवेदयामि यत् एतान् 4 ग्रन्थान् लोकाय समर्पयतु इति। पुस्तकलेखकं श्रीमन्तं जनार्दन हेगडे महोदयं तथा चन्द्रशेखर महोदयं वेदिकाम् आगच्छतु इति प्रार्थयामि। धन्यवादः। इदानीं मुख्य अतिथिवर्यं श्री मोहनदास पै महोदयं प्रार्थयामि यत् सभाम् उद्दिश्य कानिचन वाक्यानि वदतु इति।
Dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, children, you must forgive me if I am unable to speak in Sanskrit. I do consider it a blot on my life that I do not know my own language. We have been brought up very differently in a different era, and quite possibly, if we had this facility when we were children, I would have been able to speak to you in Sanskrit. Nevertheless, I would like to congratulate Samsktrita Bharati for their task of teaching the ordinary Indian how to speak in Sanskrit. Every language can only grow if ordinary people speak the language in the day-to-day life, and it's very essential that we bring down Sanskrit from its very glorious stage to a stage where ordinary people can converse and use the language and enrich themselves through its very glorious richness. Indian civilization is defined by Sanskrit. Indian civilization has come through us by Sanskrit. The greatest thoughts of man, ever since man became civilized, is in the Sanskrit language. In fact, our forefathers debated among themselves about the origin of man and the reason for man to be here, and the reason for existence, and the reason for our life. Because the most philosophically difficult question was to ask, why are we here? What are we to do? What is the purpose of our life? Because the end of life is almost certain. There is a finished date. So we go through this experience of what we call life in our lives. Many build empires, many build great legacies, but at the end of it, all of us have to meet a maker. So then they ask the question, what is the purpose of life? And I think the greatest philosophical discussions on human life is in Sanskrit. And all this has been kept in a language which is probably the most perfect language ever devised by man. Sanskrit is supposed to be a divine language. It's a language of the gods in our culture. It's a language of people who have read widely and who are highly educated and literate. Sanskrit is also the language of the common man, I'm told many years ago, at the founding time of our civilization. But we must remember that India is a very diverse country. There was no country called India in a very political sense. India was a collection of kingdoms, India was a collection of states, India was a collection of people who were bound together by a common culture, and that culture was defined through Sanskrit. And that bound all of us together. Even today, it binds all of us together to our religious rituals, to the way, like Mr. Shastri said, we name ourselves and our children, and the use of everyday words, which are the same in most languages. We have come a long way afar from that time. I was reading a book the other day. We spoke about how we in India did not know Gautama the Buddha. It was a British archaeologist who discovered that there was a person called Gautama Buddha. There was a great king called Ashoka when he discovered the Ashokan stupas and the Ashokan pillars in many parts of India. And they were not sure as to what it was. Was it a great emperor of India? Was it an alien ruler? But when they discovered the Buddha and the life of the Buddha in the mid-1840s. And from that time onwards, we have come to know how the Buddhist thought and Buddhist philosophy permeated Indian civilization for a long period of time and went all over the world. Indeed, Buddhism spread much more globally than any other language at one point of time in human history. So there are many things that are away from us, and the reason that we are away from many things is that our great thoughts and philosophies were in a language which is not a common man's language. And over a period of time, language became a means of discrimination. Language became a means of power. A certain class of people in the society sought to keep power in themselves, sought to keep the knowledge to themselves because they wanted to have the source of power, because they had read, and rightly stated that knowledge is a true source of power in every civilization. And knowledge is expressed through a language. And that language in India had to be Sanskrit. And that defining moment when people thought that they could keep it among themselves as a source of power led to the decline of Sanskrit. So it is time that organization like Samskrita Bharati come on the scene in India and educate people about how to learn and read Sanskrit, how to speak Sanskrit, bring back Sanskrit as a spoken form again. And that I think is extremely important for various reasons. Shastriji spoke about the Indian identity. And I totally agree with him about the Indian identity because many of us in our quest to be modern are getting very anglicized. If you go to the airport and you want to fly somewhere, you see many Kannadiga families with small children and the mother listening to the small 2-year child speaking about Baba Black Sheep. And every time the child says Baba Black Sheep, I feel a source of pain in my heart, which I never felt many years ago. And the reason is, we have so many nice lullabies in our own language. When I was a child, my mother used to sing me lullabies in Konkani. My father told me the Mahabharata and the Ramayana in Konkani. And I understood it. We used to sleep, and when we were put to sleep, my father used to tell me the stories, and the mother used to sing songs. And it was a very natural thing to do. Now our own children, we teach them lullabies in English, and we became very happy in broken English if the child speaks a lullaby very, very loudly. And I sometimes wonder, why is it that we do not have affection for our own culture and our own language? Because if we lose our language, if we lose our culture, we lose something which is essential to our identity. Identity is important. We are Indians, we are Kannadigas, we are Tamilians, we are Telugu people, we are Hindi speaking people, we are Malayalis, we are Bengalis, we are Himachalis, we are Uttaranchalis, whatever we are, we have an identity. And the identity is expressed through a language. And the language cannot be English. The language has to be the language through which we express affection. We express our innermost thoughts. We speak what is in our heart. We express our emotions. And we express the thoughts that have come to us through our forefathers for a long time. And all that coalesces into an individual who has an identity. And the identity is important because as India grows, India becomes richer. We cannot be an English person. We cannot be French. We cannot be Chinese. We cannot be anything else. We are Indian. And for an Indian, a language which is Indian, to which we are born, to which we belong, whatever be the language, is extremely important. And I would urge everybody that never give up your mother tongue. Never give up your mother tongue. Cherish your mother tongue. In fact, as a Konkani speaking person, in Mangalore we started the Vishwa Konkani Parishad to preserve the Konkani language. Konkanis are only about 25 lakh people. And in 30-40 years, we will lose our language. Our children do not speak our language. We marry outside our communities. And because we marry outside our communities, very often our children will not speak our language. 20, 30 years from now, they'll carry our name, they will be grown up, they'll be productive citizens, but they will not know our language. And if you don't know your language, how will you know your inheritance? How will you know your heritage? How will you know the great thoughts that came through, the stories, the songs, the dreams, the aspirations, and all that emotion that makes you what you are? And there's no point being an individual without knowing your own language. And that holds true for Sanskrit too. Because Sanskrit is a language that binds all of us. Even though we speak different languages, at the root of everything, there is Sanskrit. And in Sanskrit lies our great cultural heritage. And therefore, it is very important, we must invest in our languages, we must invest in Sanskrit, and we must keep this entire process alive. I also want to say that we are losing scholarship in our Indian languages. Sheldon Pollock, the great linguist, wrote a 30-page article lamenting the fact that in India has such a rich heritage of classical languages like Old Kannada, Tamil, Malayalam, Hindi is a new language, Sanskrit, maybe a Bengali, maybe a Marathi, etc. We don't have people who understand old tongues. We don't have enough people who understand the literature that comes to us in the original form. People read the translation. but they do not know the language in this old form, in its original form, because in the translation something gets lost. Like you translate Sanskrit into English, something of the essence of Sanskrit is lost. If you read the beautiful book, I think Celestial Light, about the Bhagavad Gita, you may read in English, but unless you understand Sanskrit language, the essence of what it is will be lost on you, because I am told every sloka in Sanskrit can be interpreted in 3 different levels. At the ordinary level, at the level of possibly a scholar, at the level of a highly evolved person. And interpreted 3 different ways, it gives you 3 different answers. So it is a language in which there is complexity, there is expression of the human mind. And this expression should not be lost. So we need to have scholars who are well versed with the old languages, and that must not be lost. Because if that is lost, we shall never become a nation which is a very strong nation. Because the true power of a nation lies in its civilization. It does not lie in the atomic bombs that you have. It does not lie in your bank balance, but it lies in your civilizational heritage, in the great ideas that make your civilization, in the answers to the complex questions that human beings have experienced throughout their lives. And that, I think, is very important. In the Western world, they take pride in the Greek civilization as the fountainhead of the civilization. They always say that civilization started with the Greeks. But we have a civilization older than the Greeks. And a little bit of the Greek civilization comes from India. The Chinese have a civilization which is older than the Greeks. And a lot of the Chinese civilization comes from India. Because in China, they always talk about the West. And we are the West of China. In China, there are 5 books like the Mahabharata and Ramayana. And one of them is called Journey to the West. Journey to the West. It is a journey of a few monks who come to India to seek the original books of the Buddha. And when they journey to the West, they go through many, many experiences. But to China, we were the West. So we were the fountain of civilization. For the entire ancient world, we were the place where man's greatest thoughts were expressed. The whole world came to us to learn from us. The whole world came to us to understand what was there. Taxila was the first university the world had ever seen. And Taxila was about maybe Buddhist thought. Taxila was about astronomy, about ancient science in the west of India, what is now in Pakistan. And Taxila was burned down by the Hunas, the Huns who came there around 600 AD. Then we had the Nalanda University. Started sometime in, I think, 300 AD or somewhere at that point of time. And it was said in Nalanda, there were 10,000 students from all over the world who walked from the far corners of the world, and 2,000 professors. And it was said, every student who came to Nalanda had to come to the gates of Nalanda, and the gates there was a Dwarapal. And the Dwarapal asked him questions. And if you do not answer the questions, you are not allowed inside. So they had an entrance test even then. It is not IITs who have this entrance test. Nalanda had an entrance test. And it was said that when Muhammad Bukhtiyar, I think, destroyed Nalanda, for 15 days and nights, Nalanda burned. Because when an invader comes to a country, the first thing they do is to destroy all the books that you have, all the manuscripts that you have. All the intellectuals are killed. Because once you kill these intellectuals, once you kill the books, you can subjugate any population. Because the essence of a civilization lies in the books which are used to convey the great thoughts to the next generation. It lies in the intellectuals who are academics, who are scholars, because they convey to the rest of the people that what the civilization is. And if you get rid of them, you can conquer the mass, and the mass will never know what the inheritance was. So Nalanda was burned. But this has been the place of ancient civilization. So we must preserve this. How do you preserve it? Today, we have a big challenge. Our children are not reading the way we used to read. When we were children, we used to go to the library and read 2 books a day. So our form of entertainment was to go to the library and read a beautiful book and read 2 or 3 books a day on Saturdays, Sundays, or the holidays. And it was a very enjoyable experience because we went on a journey throughout the world through the medium of the book. But our children today don't want to read books. They want to play on their electronic devices. They want to surf on the net. They want to go to the social media and chatter. And their language to Twitter has become a very condensed form. So our children have a different language. So how do we convey our past and the glorious heritage to our children? We have to adopt the modern form. In ISKCON, in Swami Madhupalli's ISKCON in Bangalore, We were discussing about 10 years ago, how do we talk about Krishna and Krishna stories? When we were children, our mothers used to tell us about the Krishna stories, right? You know, Krishna used to go as a child, and how we had this, this demon come there and try to take away something, and how he destroyed the demon, and how his mother tied Krishna, and how Krishna opened his mouth, and his mother saw the whole universe. I mean, these were unbelievable stories, right? But how do our children know this? Our children want to learn about Mickey Mouse. They want to learn about Goofy or Superman. Nothing wrong in it, because that's how they are growing up. So we decided we'll bring out Lord Krishna in the form of a cartoon. So you see the little Krishna cartoons? I'm sure many of you bought that. That came out of the initiative that ISKCON started. So the point I'm trying to make is, we have to form the modern forms of conveying Sanskrit to people. Sanskrit has to come. All the manuscripts like Sri Krishna he spoke about have to come out and have to be digitized and put on the web. Because once you put on the web, then people all over the world can have access to it. A taxonomy can be developed. Vedic chanting, the speaking of Sanskrit, because Sanskrit is the oral tradition. Knowledge in India is the oral tradition. It's not the written tradition. And the intonation of the oral tradition is something which is extraordinary, and I think it has certain resonance with our physical body too. And this oral tradition has to be preserved and put on the web. So we need to interpret Sanskrit in the way our youngsters want, and maybe produce Sanskrit comics. Produce the great stories of Sanskrit in comics, so our children can read them, and they like this exciting form, and maybe some of these techniques can come together and prepare these cartoons, these cartoon movies, so that they can know all these characters in Sanskrit, and our children can play, put a CD-ROM or whatever they do now, and learn. There are former books called the Color Details. In the Color Details is an electronic book format where you just move the pages and the pages speak to you. So when they're speaking to you, the voice can be your grandmother's voice, your mother's voice. So young mothers can buy this book, read it out in a nice voice. So the voiceover comes in and give it to the child. And if you're not at home, the child will flick through the books and the mother's voice will come out reading. So the whole story comes alive to the child in the mother's voice. So my suggestion is, please use modern technology. Bangalore is the home of technology. Get everybody to come here and use technology. But how do we convince young mothers to teach their children Sanskrit? Because we are in the age of the tiger moms. Young mothers want their children to be, very accomplished. The entire child's day is filled with activities. They devote the entire life to the activities of the child. Not a single moment to go loaf in the street, throw stones, or just go around and just relax and do something. They want the dominant child. So how in this stage, because of high competition, how do you tell the mother that Sanskrit is good? One way out is that learning Sanskrit helps increase memory. I mean, it's fascinating because if your memory is very good, you have an undue advantage throughout your life. You can compete in examinations, you can do very well, you can get the first class or first rank or whatever it is, and you can dominate in the knowledge field. And for that, memory is important. How do you build memory? You build memory by chanting Sanskrit slokas. And I came to know about it because my doctor, the late Dr. E.R. Pai, had come to Mangalore for the inauguration of a convention center I built, and there he spoke in Sanskrit in Bhagavad Gita. Then I asked him, how do you speak it so well? He said, when you're 7 years old, you were sent to Veda Parashala, and he learned the Bhagavad Gita. And then he went to London to do his FRCS in medicine. He said he read Gray's Anatomy, and he never opened the book, and he taught this class. Because once he read it, the entire thing was in his memory. He could locate it by page, by photograph, by, let us say, drawing, by disease, whatever it is. And throughout his life, he remembered every single patient, every single ailment, even if you met him after 30 years. So memory is very important, and memory can be done by helping young children chant in Sanskrit the slokas, because when you chant in Sanskrit, the chanting allows your neurons in your brain to connect together and to go through a particular chemical reaction and work very fast, so that the speed of the way the neurons connect help build up your memory capability. And I think that's a very fascinating thing that I discovered, I think, which we can use. Lastly, as we become a richer society, as we develop a very vibrant middle class, we, the people of this country, have to preserve our culture. Our government is captured by vested interest. Our government has become religion-based, caste-based, minority-based, and all kind of things. And therefore, to get the government to do something is very difficult because the government is an inanimate object. They are focused on different things, and they will not do anything to support our culture and our language, much as Sanskrit, because the part of India, people think that Sanskrit is communal. Sadly, very sadly, they think learning Sanskrit is communal. Learning Sanskrit is being part of the Indian right, political right, and we are all centrist, we are all secular, so you must not learn Sanskrit, and Sanskrit is bad, and that dominates the mind. It's an evil thought because Sanskrit is the root of Indian civilization. And if you don't invest in your own civilization, you're destroying your own country, you're destroying your own society. So I would urge all of you, as middle class members of society, and people to whom this country belongs. The country doesn't belong to people in Delhi. The country doesn't belong to a few political leaders. The country doesn't belong to the BJP or the Congress or the JDU or whatever it is. The country belongs to us. They spend our money. It's our money, hard-earned money. We work 12, 14 hours a day and we pay taxes, they spend our money. But they're not using it for the right purpose. We must come together. We must invest in entities like Samsktrita Bharati, and we must demand this culture. We must participate to keep this culture alive, but do it in a very different way. I want to stop here to say how happy I am to be here, because every time I go speak somewhere, I look at the thoughts of the Upanishads and the Rig Vedas and the Vedas, when they talk about the greatness of human thought and philosophy, and try to quote that in English. I never gotten myself to speak, to quote it in Sanskrit, and I feel very inadequate, very uneducated, because I can't express myself in Sanskrit and express the great thoughts of forefathers. So wish you all the best. Congratulations on knowing Sanskrit, and may you do well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that insightful speech. I truly appreciate your concern about mother's urge to sing a rhyme to her child. But there is still a Sanskrit hope there, because Sanskrit is such a beautiful and accommodative language that today there are Sanskrit verses of many of those English rhymes. Now, for example, pussycat, pussycat, where have you been? There is a marjala re marjala, putragatosi tvam, atraivasmi agatosmi rajagruha devam. So, I think it's just a matter of time when we witness a mighty revolution for the propagation of Sanskrit, and truly we need to take some of the wonderful suggestions that Mr. Mohandas Pai has given us to leverage the technological skills, especially in Bangalore, for which Bangalore is really famous. Thank you once again, sir. सांस्कृतिक कार्यक्रमाः अनुवर्तन्ते, कृपया प्रतीक्षां कुर्वन्तु। इदानीम् अस्य कार्यक्रमस्य धन्यवादसमर्पणं कर्तुं सुदर्शन महोदयं निवेदयामि। श्री सुदर्शन महोदयः संस्कृत संगम कार्यक्रमस्य जयनगर विभागस्य च संयोजकः।
हाय, मम नाम सुदर्शन इति। धन्यवादान् समर्पयितुम् अत्र आगतवान् अस्मि। संस्कृतभारत्याः संस्कृतसङ्गमः इति विशिष्टः कार्यक्रमः अयम् अद्य अपराह्णे एव 3 वादने आरब्धः अस्ति। तत्र आरम्भे उद्घाटनं कृतवान् श्रीयुतः उदय गरुडाचार्य महोदयः। तस्मै आयोजकानां परतः धन्यवादान् समर्पयामि। सभायाम् अतिथिरूपेण आगतवान् मोहसिन महोदयः तथा मोहनदास पै महोदयः। ताभ्यां महोदयाभ्यां धन्यवादाः इति वदामः। अस्माकं प्रार्थनाम् अङ्गीकृत्य इमं कार्यक्रमं प्रति आगत्य स्वीय प्रोत्साहदायक वचनैः अस्मान् तोषितवान्, अनुग्रहीतवान्, इतोपि एतादृशान् कार्यक्रमान् कर्तुं प्रेरितवान् अपि अस्ति चमु कृष्णशास्त्री महोदयः। तस्मै अस्माकं धन्यवादाः। एतस्य कार्यक्रमस्य साफल्यार्थं बहवः मम मित्राणि, कार्यकर्तारः च अहर्निशं कार्यं कृतवन्तः, कुर्वन्तः सन्ति अपि। अन्तः भवनस्य बहिः अपि सन्ति तेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः धन्यवादाः समर्प्यन्ते। पुनश्च फलावकाशं दत्तवद्भ्यः आर्वी डेंटल कॉलेज जनेभ्यः धन्यवादाः। अन्ते कार्यक्रमस्य यशसे प्रत्यक्षरूपेण परोक्षरूपेण कार्यं कृतवद्भ्यः सर्वेभ्यः धन्यवादान् समर्प्य विरमामि। सांस्कृतिककार्यक्रमः भविष्यति, आरंभ भविष्यति पुनः ತಿರ್ಗಾ ಈಗ ಇನ್ನಷ್ಟು ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳು ಮುಂದುವರಿಯುತ್ತೆ. ಪ್ರತೀಕ್ಷಾ ಕುರ್ವಂತು.
कृपया सर्वे तिष्ठन्तु अत्रैव तिष्ठन्तु इति प्रार्थयामि। ಏಕಚಕ್ರ ಅನ್ನೋ ಬೃಹತ್ ನಾಟಕ ಇವಾಗ ನಡೆಯಲಿದೆ. ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ತಮ್ಮ ತಮ್ಮ ಆಸನಗಳನ್ನು ಸ್ವೀಕರಿಸಬೇಕಾಗಿ ವಿನಂತಿ. इदानीं लोकार्पणं पुस्तकानि बहिः डिस्कौण्ट् रूपेण लभ्यन्ते।
हरि ओं बान्धवाः, इदानीं प्रदर्शन्ति छात्राः एकचक्रं नामकम् एकं रूपकं। महाभारतमिदं कथं
कथं तत्र आसीत् सर्वमपि एकत्र पुनः द्रष्टुं शक्नुमः। इदं नाटकं महाभारतात् स्वीकृतं वर्तते। अतः सर्वेपि छात्राणां तथा आयोजकानां च प्रेरयितुं संस्कृतनाटकस्य ज्ञानं प्राप्तुं संस्कृतं कीदृशम् आसीत् इति पुनः अवगन्तुं स्वस्वस्थानेषु तिष्ठन्तु, नाटकं पश्यन्तु, आनन्दम् अनुभवन्तु। ಪ್ರೇಕ್ಷಕ ವೃಂದದಲ್ಲಿರತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸಹ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು. ನೇಪಥ್ಯದಿಂದ ನಾಯಕರೇ ಮಾತನಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಅಂದುಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತ ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠ ಭಾಷೆ ಎಂಬುದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತ ನಾಟಕ ಲೋಕಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಅಂದಿನ ವೈಭವವನ್ನು, ಅಂದಿನ ಶ್ರೇಷ್ಠ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯದ ಸಮೃದ್ಧಿಯನ್ನು ಈಗ ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ನೋಡುವಂತಹ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನವನ್ನು ಮಾಡೋಣ. ಏಕಚಕ್ರಂ ಎಂಬತಕ್ಕಂತಹ ಈ ನಾಟಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ತಮ್ಮ ತಮ್ಮ ಸ್ಥಾನಗಳಲ್ಲಿಯೇ ಆಸೀನರಾಗಿರಬೇಕು ಎಂದು ಈ ಮೂಲಕವಾಗಿ ತಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಕಳಕಳಿಯಿಂದ ವಿನಂತಿಸುತ್ತೇನೆ. ಧನ್ಯವಾದ. ಶುಭ.
नमस्कारः। अद्य अस्माकं मित्राणि कस्यचन संस्कृतनाटकस्य सर्वेषां नमस्कारः। अद्य अस्माकं मित्राणि कस्यचन संस्कृतनाटकस्य प्रदर्शनं दास्यन्ति। अस्य नाटकस्य कर्ता विद्वल्लोके प्रसिद्धः, संस्कृतकाव्यक्षेत्रे दिग्गजः, अनेक शास्त्रेषु कृतभूरिपरिश्रमः, अखिल कर्नाटक सम्मेलनस्य पंचम अधिवेशनस्य अध्यक्षः, सारस्वतलोके वृद्धः श्री नडहट्टी रंगनाथ शर्मा महोदयः, अनेककृतीनां रचयिता, रामायणस्य श्रेष्ठ अनुवादकः, विदुषां विद्वान्, प्रशस्तिभिः अलङ्कृतः एषः महाभागः। अस्य एकचक्रम् इति नाटकं द्वितीय पदवीपूर्व संस्कृत पाठ्यमपि अस्ति। तत् इदानीं पठन्ति केचन छात्राः योऽपि संस्कृते विशेष आसक्तिं ददति। एकचक्रम् इति अस्य नाटकस्य सन्देशः स्पष्टः। धर्मः सदा विजयति, विश्वासः अत्र भीमस्य प्रेषणं संकल्प्य ब्राह्मणकुलस्य रक्षणं करोति। आसुरीं शक्तिम् अविश्वासं च कारयति। श्रेष्ठकार्यस्य कृते भीमं चोदयति। सर्वदा विश्वासः भवतु, तेन कार्यसिद्धिः इति सामयिकं सन्देशं ददाति इदं नाटकम्। आगच्छन्तु, मिलित्वा नाटकं पश्यामः।
शबलित गुणयोगात् कल्पिते विश्वरङ्गे निरवधि नवनाट्ये नर्तयन्तं नटन्तं प्रणमत विभुमाद्यं सूत्रधारं महान्तम् प्रणमत विभुमाद्यं सूत्रधारं महान्तम्। अहो धन्येयं भारतभूमिः यैषा गिरिवनजलपुष्पैः सर्वतः शोभमाना मृदुवः पवमाना पावनी रत्नगर्भा शुभचरितविधात्री धर्मशान्त्योत्सवित्री मम हृदयमुपास्ते सौख्यधात्री प्रजानां मम हृदयमुपास्ते सौख्यधात्री प्रजानां। वेदांग विदुषां समस्त जन कल्याणकांक्षिणां जन्मभूमिः इयम्। परन्तु कालमहिमा दुरत्ययः। उत्पद्यते किल जनो यो दुर्मनायते गुणेषु। यः एषः सनातनी सुनृतां संस्कृतवाणीं निन्दति। सौरीं प्रभाम् अपलपति। चान्द्रमसीं पटेन आच्छादयति। भवति किल कण्टके तरुः आम्रवणेषु। भारतजननी सम्प्रति सत्यपि प्राज्य साम्राज्ये सत्सु प्राज्ञसुतेष्वपि दुर्जनैः अभिभूतैषा कुन्तीव परिशोचति। कुन्तीव परिशोचति।
अहमस्मि कुन्ती भोजेन पालिता, कुन्तीति विश्रुता लोके। पितृसङ्केतितं त्रुधा इति नामधेयं तु जनैः विस्मृतप्रायम्। शूरसेन महाराजो मे पिता, मारिषा च माता, हन्ता स्वप्नायितमिव मे पित्रोः स्मरणम्। पञ्चमे पुत्राः सन्ति देवेन्द्रकल्पाः, भरतवंशप्रदीपाः। अहो दैवपारुष्यम्, एकचित्रायां गीते भिक्षामटन्ति। कष्टं भोः कष्टम्। भाग्यशाली प्रसूतव्यो, न शूरो न च पण्डितः। शूराश्च कृतविद्याश्च मत्पुत्रा भैक्षजीविनः। मत्पुत्रा भैक्षजीविनः।
जन्मापि वंशे विशते हिमांशो दायादता पाण्डुमहीश्वरस्य भैक्षेण वृत्तिः परगेहवासः दिग्भीमसेनं दिगिमौ च बाहु दिग्भीमसेनं दिगिमौ च बाहु
सोद्वेगो इव रक्ष्यते वत्सो भीमः। वत्स, किम् अवाच्यम् अविहितं केनापि कुटुम्बिना?
अवाच्यं वाच्यं वा किं वचरितां भैक्षमनिशम्। प्रहारं हारं वा करह्य समानं गणयति। धनुः सत्यं त्यक्त्वा ददति यदि मे पाण्डुतनयाः। कपालं तच्चित्रं ददति नैते अद्यापि हृदयम्।
वत्स, नूनं वज्रहृदयास्मि मन्दभाग्या। वत्स, क्षमा हि परमं धनम्।
किमिवास्ति भिक्षुकाणाम् अपरं धनम्।
सत्यं सत्यं माता पिता ज्ञानं धर्मो भ्राता दया सखा शान्तिः पत्नी क्षमा पुत्रः षडेते अवबान्धवाः।
ओहो समागताः शमिनां दुरन्तराः।
वत्स, पाण्डवधुरन्धरो हि भवान्। यस्य बाहुबलम् आश्रित्य रक्षितो वयं राक्षसहुताशनात्।
सोऽयं रक्षत इदानीं सोदरे रानीतेन भिक्षान्नेन
वत्स भीमसेन त्यज मानसं कषायं दैवं हि दुरतिक्रमम् दैवं पृष्ठतः कृत्वा पौरुषमाश्रयन्ते पुरुषर्षवाः अर्जुन जानामि ते पराक्रमं समर्थोऽसि शतिवर्षणे किन्तु पितृव्यस्य धृतराष्ट्रस्य अभिमतम् अविज्ञाय न अस्माभिः चेष्टितव्यम्
न खलु न विज्ञायते तदभिमतं सोऽयं पितृव्यः पितेन पालितो येन जन्मान्धश्चक्रवर्तिना तस्यात्मजान् निर्विशङ्कं यो निष्कासितवान् यः
वत्स अस्ति पितामहो भीष्मः धनुराचार्यो द्रोणः तौ किल अस्माकं हितं रक्षतः
आर्य निर्मलं हृदयं किल सर्वम् आत्मनि आकलयति
सर्वे भवन्तो विनीताः सृष्टिमन्त्रयन्ति परिपालयन्तु भगवतो वेदव्यासमहर्षेः वचनं यदाह तत्र भवान् अस्माकम् एकचक्रनगरवासम् उद्दिश्य वसतेः प्रतिच्छन्ना ममागमनकाङ्क्षिणः इति
युज्यते